President Biden arriving in El Paso, Texas this afternoon. Right now, he's on his way to tour a migrant detention center. And before that, the president met with border enforcement at the port of entry facility, speaking with officers and seeing demonstrations of inspections and drug seizures that take place daily. And moments after he got off of Air Force One, Texas Governor Greg Abbott greeted him, handing him a scathing letter that read in part, quote, "Your visit to the southern border is $20 billion too little and 2 years too late." Here's the governor moments ago after he spoke to the president.
I told him how thousands of Texans have lost their lives, that tens of thousands of Texans have had their lives destroyed by his open border policies. But most importantly, I provided to him something that he asked for. The president asked for solutions from Republicans. In the letter that I gave him, I provided 5 solutions that already exist. It just so happens he's 2 years and about $20 billion too late.
What did the president say to you?
He said he wanted to work with us.
Okay, well, that was Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Just after he met with the president, he handed him a letter, basically a list of demands that he would like to see the president respond to. I want to take it out to our panel right now. Historic visit, first visit by President Biden to the border as president. He is greeted there by Greg Abbott, who I might say was just invited last night. I mean, this trip has been planned for months. Texas Governor Greg Abbott's aide received an email last night saying, "Hey, we're coming to the border. Would the president like to meet with us?" And Governor Abbott hands the president this letter. Charlie, you had a chance to take a look at the letter. What did you think about it? What's the most important in there that the governor asked the president?
Well, of course, in the letter, he talked about the fact that you have property owners along the border whose lives and whose property has been absolutely destroyed by by Biden's policies at the border. He also talked about the fact that you have his policies have entirely empowered the drug cartels who have complete operational control of the border. But the most important thing in there are the things, the 5 demands that he makes. And all the 5 demands that he makes are simple demands of law that are already in the law that Joe Biden is already supposed to be doing. And so it's just sort of it's a reminder that, and Governor Abbott says this in the letter, that you know, for all of the problems at the border, President Trump solved the immediate crisis at the border, stopped the flow, which is, to me, the most pressing part of the problem. And Joe Biden systematically went through and undid every single one of those things to create the human catastrophe that we now have at the border.
Yeah, the numbers of people coming over are just astonishing. Why don't we put some of those numbers up now if we can? We have the fiscal 2023 numbers compared to 2022. Take a look at those numbers. So for 2023, 718,000 plus, swamping the year before, 518,000. Then you have your daily border average of crossings. You know, it is an astonishing number. It's almost 7,000 people, 6,800 people crossing the border every day. It is unbelievable. And I want to take a listen to a former Border Patrol chief. This is Rodney Scott, really putting these numbers into context so we can all understand them.
It's off the charts. I believe a prior secretary under Obama said over 1,000 a day, is 4,000 in custody. It makes him lose sleep. People need to put that into perspective. So every single one of those, let's just call it a number for right now, that's about an hour, a man-hour minimum of processing. That literally wipes out all the Border Patrol agents on the line.
Unreal. Guy, it's great that the president is visiting the border today. Is anything going to change, do you think? Are there going to be any new policies to address whatever he sees today?
Well, they've announced their new policy package late last week. I'm skeptical that it will really deal with the heart of the problem in a number of different ways. The numbers that we just put up on the screen are extraordinary. I mean, if you go back to the first 3 months, roughly first 100 days of last fiscal year, it was over 500,000 people encountered at the border. That was a blowout number, totally unacceptable. And then thus far this fiscal year, it's more than 200,000 more.
Yeah.
I mean, that I think helps underscore. There it is. That underscores right there what you're looking at, the scope of this problem. This is a mind-blowing magnitude that we're talking about. And I'm glad that Governor Abbott prepared that letter, simple one page, a few bullet points of solutions, handing it directly to a president who has gone out of his way to ignore this problem. He has not even pretended to care about this problem. Abbott understood he had one shot, a moment to try to get his position across, and he's done so. And I think in that letter, the most important phrase, 3 words in the letter, remain in Mexico.
Yeah.
That is the #1 policy under President Trump, that the reversal of which has been particularly harmful. And I read a Reuters story today that was borderline propaganda, and it was all framing it as the Republicans unwilling to work with the Democrats on immigration, and that's really the problem. And they said this intransigence, I'm paraphrasing, leaves President Biden with few good options. And it's just not true. We could talk about legislative solutions at some point. He could reinstitute Remain in Mexico tomorrow as a policy, and things would get a lot better. He's not going to do that, and he should have to answer why.
Yeah. Well, Tammy, I want to ask you also about these numbers, but I want to take a listen to something that the White House press secretary said on the way to El Paso aboard Air Force One. Take a listen to this.
The number of people attempting to cross the border unlawfully in El Paso is now down by over 70%, and that has been since mid-December. Since the president launched the Venezuela parole process, the average daily number of Venezuelans nationals encounter at the border in El Paso alone is now a quarter of what it was prior to the launch. So again, the president's border enforcement measures are working.
Wow. Tammy, the president's border enforcement measures are working. We saw the numbers. We saw them. We heard from the former Border Patrol chief about how unbelievable they are. How does she get away with a statement like that?
She gets away with it because the Fox News audience knows these numbers and the reality of it. But there was a study for I think just a month ago indicating about 6% of Americans understood and realized the magnitude of what was happening at the border. They didn't know about these numbers. When you think about, like you mentioned, the Reuters story, I think, that they're looking at media that reinforces that rhetoric, and that's all they see. And so they're noticing that for that base, if only 6%, no, then it's working for them.
And the question, by the way, was like, how many people crossed the border illegally last year? And only 6% were close to correct.
They had any real grasp, and maybe it's, we have more than 6% as we know of the audience. But that's the issue, is that they're looking at this as a news cycle. What kind of information are they controlling versus the reality? And I think that one of the reasons why this visit was important for the Democrats was that it takes off the table the argument you've never been, but it also then, in a cleaned up environment, lets them reinforce this is how this might be looking and I'm doing a good job. And if he does reverse some of his positions and there's an actual change in the numbers, like Remain in Mexico, he can take credit for that. He can say, look, we really are making the difference here. But I think that really the Democrats for a long time, starting with Barack Obama, have been about winning a news cycle, winning the public argument and the rhetoric, and keeping Americans ignorant as to what's going on.
All right, so we're hearing from the press pool on the ground there in El Paso some comments that the president just made. The president said this, quote, "They need a lot of resources, and we're going to get it for them."
Yeah.
Okay.
No. He hears that and he thinks spending. I get to spend more money. That's all he's talking about. But the follow-up question for Karine Jean-Pierre would have been, okay, specifically which policies of the president have according to you, lowered the number of people crossing the border, which is a lie. But there's the two most valuable things that make people really do well in politics. One is to be completely shameless, and these people are completely shameless. The other is to be completely untethered from reality or the truth. And the White House says these things because they have no shame and because they don't want to, they don't care about the truth, but also because, as you point out, Tammy, the people in our business just don't. It's like we're the only ones that hold them accountable for this stuff.
Or not even holding accountable, reporting the actual events that are occurring.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your politics are. These are facts. And also, Democrats have now gone after him about the condition. The mayor of El Paso, Democrat officials locally, maybe, and the shift when it comes to Hispanics and Hispanic voting trends. When it affects them in that way, they'll care. Otherwise not.
And that's the most important point, is the fact that the reason that he reversed himself on this and decided to go to the border is because even he realizes this is an important issue to his voters.
Well, speaking of people in the community and people who need resources, let's hear from some people in the community and how this entire situation has affected where they live.
We're proud Americans.
Yes, we are.
But we want it to be done legally. And the assumption by a lot of people, this administration and our congresswoman, that we're okay with what's happening to our city right now is absolutely outrageous.
November, a house got busted for trafficking migrants across the street.
Our partners in Border Patrol are now constantly pulled off the line to help process these migrants, which has made the border unsecure.
They're actually using our city services. It's not just isolated to Border Patrol agents. Now the city, the county, and the state are involved in taking care of these illegal aliens.
It doesn't matter where you go in El Paso, there's illegals walking everywhere.
So, Guy, forgotten in a lot of the coverage on this is how this calamity is affecting people who live there.
Yep. So 2 points. Number one, the president reportedly just talked about resources. Probably some additional resources are appropriate. It's much more about the policy. That cannot be said enough. Not so much spending, some key reversals. Secondly, that montage that we just played, I hope that President Biden, during his time on the ground there, will actually listen to some of those precise people, either them specifically or people like them. He needs to hear that message. Whether he's actually going to have that, if the handlers have sort of orchestrated this thing and choreographed it differently, then that would be a missed opportunity, I would say. And we'll probably learn more about that in the hours and days to come.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.